Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of Thor Annual Issue 1. And I thought this issue was okay. I didn't know what I was expecting. I thought this would be tied more with the Infinity Stones and the people that were wielding them. But this one was just a kind of weird one, actually. It details with pretty much the celebration after the War of the Realms, and it's just I'm like, okay, that was a little bit ago, but okay, I'll bite. And the first part of the issue kind of deals with this dude Everdrop who takes care of the Quailiac, which is like a splitling of the World Tree Yggdrasil, and that it like does some good stuff within the realm, and he's trying to make sure that it's all good and everything, but suddenly out of nowhere something kind of takes him and drags him out. Well, we then see that the celebration is happening in Alfheim of the Light Elves, and that Featherwine, Lady Featherwine, is like looking at everything like that, getting all the things together. He's like pops up. He's got different kind of speech bubble. Eyes look different, and they're all that. It's like, hey, I've got a gift for Thor and whatnot. And she's like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. And then we see Thor pop up. We see a joke thing of like, hey, we brought Spider-Man, but it's actually Hawkeye. Spider-Man couldn't attend, even though he was pretty big with. He helped out in the War of the Realms. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I just didn't see that dude. Whatever. And they're pretty much doing their stuff. Everdrop presents his gift, but it's like a flower kind of thing that wraps itself around Thor's head. And we see that he's at the day that Loki tried to conquer Earth and the Avengers were formed. And we see that this creature, Valg, rips himself out of Everdrop and talks about how it's like, wow, I'm a being that feeds off like chaos and violence and shit, and thought I was going to starve here until your War of the Realms. I'm like, dude, there's a lot of fucking war and shit and violence and shit going on even before the War of the Realms. If you need something to be amped up to that little tick, alright, whatever. So he starts doing this thing where he's like fucking around with Thor's kind of realities and shit, and sending him like into kind of different ones with like future knowledge to kind of freak his ass out and create this kind of like evil Thor Borkin dude who pretty much gets banished because he got beat by Mangog, because that's one of the weird kind of things that they did, and that he then is banished from Asgard, teams up with Hela, leads the army of the dead, pretty much racks all of Asgard, loses an arm, and is like supposedly super powerful, but it doesn't really show that much. It's like, okay, we've got Allfather Thor here, who pretty much handily beats his ass, and evidently the Valg dude is like more like an amp for a colony, and he's going to try and signal his other people, be like, yo, Goodie's here, and Thor pretty much is able to be snapped out of what's going on because the League of Realms pops up and like, hey, don't do that shit, and are able to like shoot the thing off. Thor gets Mjolnir, and how for some reason Mjolnir acts better here. It's really weird timeline wise because this Thor doesn't have a beard and looks kind of like marginally okay, whereas in the main Thor series he's like dealing with an unruly Mjolnir, and here Mjolnir works with him really very well. It's just really weird timeline wise. It's like, okay, I understand fighting a kind of crazed evil kind of version of like future Thor kind of would have been an interesting kind of take, but it's not really that interesting here. I'm like, okay. And he pretty much is able to send that Thor back to his place to try and give him kind of a fresh start. Where he's like, yeah, if you come back here, I'm going to beat your ass. We had also seen that Thor was pretty much lifting a flying cat thing on a giant rock to amuse children, and that evidently sometimes he will wrestle giant cats, and it's like, the night's still young. And then Sif pretty much makes a joke that Hawkeye wants Thor to teach him how to wrestle these giant cats. And then he's like, alright, cool. So I was kind of disappointed because the story was kind of just like, I can understand that you can do kind of like a one-off story in the annuals, but this one was just like kind of all over the place, timeline wise, of like where it would be set and how it would be set, and just is not executed interestingly enough. Like a creature that would feed off chaos and violence. Okay, cool. and then summoning like an evil version of Thor. That's interesting, but it just really wasn't interesting to read through. It was just like, okay. Because the thing is, you also got the status quo kind of effect to kind of work out with and everything. Like the other annuals, I would put more that the Iron Man annual was a better one because it did a nice kind of characterization between Iron Man and Miles Morales' Spider Man, dealing with somebody pretty much testing out the being that has fallen into possession of the Space Stone. Cap's also had kind of issues with how Cap was kind of dealing with the person with the Time Stone. Now, granted, that had more of a kind of interesting kind of plot of like the dude wanted to use the Time Stone to fix a past mistake of his, but that one even kind of had weirdness, and this one is just, in my opinion, the kind of weakest of the three at the moment that I've read. I'm just like, if you just want, if you're really into Thor, I don't think you'll be too disappointed, but I was just like, okay, this doesn't really add much to anything. It doesn't really add much to what's going on with the Infinity stuff that the other two had, at least. And in the back part of the issue, we get this really weird thing with Fury. Pretty much, I don't know if he's being thrown through this vision thing where he's like, oh, all this stuff you've done is pretty much stupid. I had a world that was pretty cool, even though it was made by a deal with the devil. And Nighthawk is just like, yeah, join me, Fury. It's like, what? Now, granted, I could have read them out of order because I'm not going to go into all of the different annuals that link up with the whole Infinity thing, so I'm getting this kind of out of context with what's going on with Fury, but it's just like really weird. I'm like, why would Fury deal with this dude? Your devil world was kind of fucked up. I don't know. This was just a weird kind of issue, and I was kind of disappointed in it. But if you're really into Thor and you really want to collect all this stuff, go for it. Otherwise, I'd be like, you could just kind of pass on it, especially if you're really more interested and invested in what's going on in the main Thor issues. So those are my opinions on the issue. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.